welcome back. Today we're going to talk about why you should never, ever, ever hire an INTJ.
No, you definitely should not. And I think we should start with something that most people that have looked at any INTJ videos on YouTube know about, which is the idea of the INTJ and the ISTJ actually being really bad at extroverted feeling. And where this shows up in the workplace is in small talk. It's the kind of trivial things that build rapport, especially if you're new to a company. It's kind of like how was your weekend, how are the kids, what are you going to do this weekend?
Yes.
But it's sort of like, as an INTJ, TE, driving into the office, wanting to get things done, kind of neglecting all the little things to build rapport with people. The boss's door is open, you don't say hi to them, you just go right to your desk, you start pounding away. That can build a little bit of resentment, oh, I guess he's very bristly or a prickly dude or something like that.
Yeah, people think that you just don't care about them genuinely, but it's funny, when people ask me how was your weekend or any plans for the weekend, I'm like, why are you asking? Is this just nervous jabber, you know? But it is true, those that are extroverted feelers, I guess, it's really hard for me to tell, but I guess they actually care. And they genuinely want to know, but that's just not, it's not a strength.
Yeah, it's I have gotten coffee on the way into work and showed up, and then people are like, oh, you got coffee? And I'm like, I should have asked someone, hey, I'm getting coffee, does anyone else want anything? That's what an extroverted feeling type would do, and I feel like for the INTJ especially, we just don't think about other people in that sense, thus not great in the corporate setting.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could be trained to get better at that intellectually, but I don't know that you would ever naturally be
no.
Does everyone want coffee?
Being bad at extrovert feeling means that HR has a lot of conversations with you. Some of your jokes they're not always taken for how genius they are.
Here's it. No, you can never read the room. You can't read the room. You don't know, you think you're being super funny. Other people are what is he talking about? Or you think you are picking an appropriate topic to discuss because it interests you. And I'm going, oh my gosh, you're at work. You should know not to talk about these things at work, So it's you're not funny and you pick the wrong topic to talk about because you think that everyone's just your friend around you and you're just talking. When in reality, there's approved subject matters. Yeah,
and it's funny because in corporate America today, there's you know what? Tell your story. Everyone wants to hear your brand, your personal brand. It's all right, I'm telling you my brand. It's well, we didn't mean that.
We didn't actually mean
that. We thought, there's like Deanna said, there's an approved your story we can tell.
Yeah, right.
I think another thing that a lot of I specifically believe is the INTJ and not the ENTJ, even though there's sister types, is that I don't think a lot of INTJs care about money. Especially in a sales role. Motivation from management is always money driven. It's hit this number, get this amount of money. And I think for the INTJ, it's that doesn't motivate me unless it's tied to something that's intellectually stimulating. If it's about being the smartest person in the room and having the most interesting way about going about something and that will get you money, maybe that motivation could be tied, but I don't think we're just going to throw money at you necessarily motivates the INTJ.
So that's an interesting thing that you say. So if I'm a manager of an INTJ and I want to motivate you, should I come up with some sort of contest of everyone come up with an idea of how to solve this problem or do this thing? Then you'd be totally motivated, and you might actually be motivated in their sense of get more work done.
Right.
But for a different reason, not because they're dangling $500 in front of you or something.
Yeah, I've had metric-driven things where it's all right, today especially, it's a Friday, whoever can do the most calls in 2 hours. It's absolutely not, does not tie in. That's not an intellectual pursuit. It's just it's just smile and dial and just blast away to get a $15 gift card to Starbucks. Nope, no one's interested in that.
So
there's this topic of entrepreneurship that I really believe that INTJ is suited for if they're going to fit in corporate America, which is instead of entrepreneurship where you're doing something going out on your own, entrepreneurship's you're already in a structure, you see how to make it better, create within it, because Whereas in entrepreneurship, it's like you have to do it all by yourself. If you have the resources and the apps and the support and the software for entrepreneurship inside a company, it's a lot easier to start. But I say that because there's a very small amount of companies that are going to give you that leeway, give you that autonomy to kind of crash around, make mistakes, maybe waste some money trying to figure out things. So that is where they could thrive, but there has to be like a wide leeway for the INTJ.
Well, here's an example. In one company that you worked for, they let you like start writing articles for their monthly newsletter, and they let you do like a podcast and interview people about a certain topic. Like they allowed for that to happen, which we were thinking, wow, like you're really thriving at this company. And then honestly, when it came down to it, like a corporation's a corporation, and it was a sales role. And when like COVID hit and they had to lay people off, they didn't look at the whole big picture of like, look at all these extra things Joe's doing just because. Like he's so involved in our company. They were just like looking at the numbers today, and today your numbers just so happen to be lower than someone else's, you know? So it's interesting. It's like they allowed for it, they gave you that reign, but ultimately it's not what they considered, you know, in terms of retention. It's because it doesn't directly translate to money, I guess, instantly.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, and that is one of the things that I think for the INTJ will be upsetting is the idea that because things are looked at as Q1, Q2, they're looked in very short stints, and INTJs are long-term planners. You know, if you have something that's going to pan out next year, that's great, but like, what are you doing for me lately? Because we're always looking to return profits to shareholders, things are looked at in a very short amount of time, so that the INTJ's long-term planning does not always jive with a strict corporate structure. And I think, especially a publicly traded company, is going to be hard to work with an INTJ, for an INTJ.
I think that's a really good point.
So,
that's all I have to say.
That's what I make. I make good points. With the INTJs, need to experiment. Like I said, you're gonna have to have a boss or management that can support that. And you have an example. Yeah,
I mean, INTJs, you wouldn't think so at first, but you are surprisingly creative. You know, corporate structures are constantly like, just fall in line. When you had a role that was making a lot of phone calls, they were just like, here's your script, you know, read the script. And then you kind of pushed back politely and was like, well, why do we say it this way? Can't we say it a different way? And you had a nice enough boss that was like, sure, try it your way. I think he kind of knew, like, okay, this script has been developed over the years and it's been perfected, and this is the way, but I'm going to let Joe learn it himself, you know? And so he was nice enough to let you learn it. You tried your own way, and then you're like, oh, I see why that line is put in there. Oh, I see why that's there. And you had to like come to your own conclusion.
Yes, and it gained the most valuable thing for a boss from the INTJ's point of view is respect, because he was like, you know what, Joe, try it. Let's see what happens. If it works, great. I mean, I still look good as the boss, so go ahead and try it. And then it didn't blow up in my face, but it just didn't work.
Yeah.
And then I tried it the script's way, and I just said it word for word, and it worked. And I told him, hey, this worked, and he's like, awesome, that's great. And I gained respect for him because I think he wrote it. So he wasn't like too butthurt that I wanted to challenge it, but he's like, let's see. It didn't work, but it wasn't like I told you so. It was like, good for you for trying, but thanks for also approving my method. So that's rare though.
He earned your buy-in.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting.
And I think the buy-in part is like, I think the INTJs always come into a situation thinking they're the smartest person in the room. So thus, like, the first point where their boss shows incompetence, they're like, I knew it, this guy can't do it. And then there's this constant, like, I think, arrogance that happens where you're like, I could do it better. If they put me in charge, I'll be running this place, like, you know, the company will be hitting profits they've never seen. Not true, but that's the attitude.
Well, that brings me to the point. I mean, if you are your own boss,
right,
then you can try things out, and when you fail, you just fail. You can't blame it on anyone else. You can't say, oh, it's really because of this guy. Like in a corporate structure, you kind of can sometimes, where you're like, oh, well, she didn't do her part, so that's why, you know, there's no one to blame if you're your own boss. And then vice versa, if you succeed, then you can like have all the glory.
Yeah, you can. And you're right. That is the benefit. I think INTJs don't get labeled as creative. I would never label myself creative in the sense of like artistic, but I think there's a little bit of that ENTP shadow type that goes on with a healthy INTJ, where they just want to see like if it'll break, but if it works, it'll be like, wow, that was out of the box, or I can't believe that your marketing plan worked, or that the way that you did that video, we never thought about that. That's where the creativity comes from, where so I just want to see if it'll work, and then there's a lot of trial and error. I worked on so many different scripts that were outside of what I was supposed to be doing, but like then I found the one that worked, and then I became a top performer. So you need that trial and error. In a corporate structure, that's really not allowed. You get that kind of, no offense, that SJ temperament where it's like, well, the way we're doing it's not broken, why fix it?
Well, and they can't afford it. They can't afford for you to just be playing around and trying all these things all the time.
Of course, yeah, that's what
I mean, that's their mindset,
we just
right?
can't afford it.
I mean, I've talked to corporations that I've worked for about starting up new programs for like internships and how I think it'd be really great for like retention, but it's so long term. They always say like, oh, we don't have the budget right now, or like that's a great idea, but maybe someday.
Great idea.
You know?
Glad you brought it up. We're not going to do anything about it, but great. So, and I think that I feel like that I'm a very stubborn, introverted feeling type. I really don't want to do anything that's not authentically me. So like if I'm reading someone else's words and I'm trying to make it like try to sound like it's coming from me, that just really does not work with my authenticity, that real strong FI. Even though it's in the third slot, I still feel like it comes out all the time. So you can really promote that authenticity in your own business, doing your own thing, where it's like, what do I want to do, as weird as it is, but I'm able to put my full effort and vision behind it.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting when you say own business. I think more specifically as a solopreneur, because like we talked about, you're not great at FE, so it's not like you should be necessarily surrounding yourself with like a ton of people who are working for you or with you or whatever. Like you're very selective with who you want to work with, and you know, so you have to work for yourself, but like really stay super small, I think.
And I think you're right. And I think for being a solopreneur, the most important thing, and I've said this, I don't think I've ever said it, I've probably said it to myself, but space, and that could mean like physical space, that could mean time, that could mean a long runway. Like some people could start a business tomorrow and thrive. I think the INTJ needs like an 18-month ramp to kind of just see how things are working and get all the data, but then once they figure it out, it's pretty incredible. So yes, solopreneurship is probably most suited to the INTJ.
Well, and like you said, INTJs kind of think like they're the best, and so when you know now you can't claim that like you're working for someone who's less competent than you. Like you're working for you. Yeah,
and it can be kind of an ego shot if your grand scheme doesn't work out. You like Deanna says, you can't go blaming, oh, it's so and so's fault, or like it's the SEO, or it's my web traffic, or it's the marketing. It's like, that's all you, bud.
But do you feel like INTJs are, because of the whole trial and error thing, they can pivot well, or do you think their ego gets hurt that they like retreat?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think they're better than you think at pivoting, but I do think that once they get in that laser vision, they will either ignore very good advice or data that's like coming right into their eyeballs to just be like, nope, this is how I want to do it, and that FI stubbornness gets in the way.
Yeah, I mean, you get to create your own workflow and your own structure, and you get to like see what works for you and what doesn't, and I think that's probably why you need that longer ramp up. Exactly. Yeah.
And you know, Deanna knows that I'm really stubborn. Like I hate asking people to subscribe. It doesn't feel like me. Like if you watch this video and you say you'll click it and you'll subscribe if it's good enough. I don't think anyone needs to tell you to subscribe.
Well, it's because you care so much about being authentic, and you want to be yourself. Like we just met up with someone that you've only known virtually, and she said to you, wow, you're the exact same person. Yeah. You know, the same person that I've known, you know, and I don't know, she was surprised by that. Yeah. And I think that some people, when they meet me in person, maybe I come across way differently than I come across on the camera right now. You know, so you strive for authenticity so much that when you are asking someone to subscribe to your channel, it just like feels fake. Yeah. You know, which is why I do it, because as an ISTJ, I'm about traditions. I'm like, my whole life I've been a professional nagger. I feel like no matter what my job was, I was always like, hey, where's that thing?
Yeah.
You need to do this. I'm always like following up. So I don't mind to do that stuff. He hates it still though. Like we've actually legitimately gone in arguments about me asking people to subscribe to the channel or like buy your merch or anything like that, because it's just he doesn't want to do it. So, but it's cool. I'll do it.
Go ahead.
Subscribe. See you guys.
I tried to live without you. Just can't get you off my mind.